Greetings. I wasn't so sure how I would make this video. Either maybe I put these thoughts at the beginning or the end of the Renegades review, but then I just decided it would be just not fitting for the video. It would make it too long, and also this seems to be a more poignant time right now to jump into the discussions, as there seems to be an elevated interest in the topic, and therefore I share these thoughts right now before the next DLC release. Even though initially I planned to do this all in one, but it would have completely blown over the video, made it unenjoyable to watch, I think, because there's a lot of rambling going on here. So I'm just gonna do it right now, just a quick rambling video. There have been a number of content creators that are either leaving, reacting to people leaving, or voicing their opinions on the state of the game, and, very important, additionally the community surrounding Destiny 2 and Bungie. Some are just quietly leaving, other content creators talked about their reasons a bit, some are making very sure nobody thinks they are a shill. Can I be honest there for a minute? If you have to vehemently deny and point out actively that you are not indeed a shill, I don't know, man, maybe you are one. It makes me suspicious as hell when people cope like that. Some others are left due to the community being too toxic, which I also have trouble understanding, since usually if you have a massive follower count, all of the negative posts get always drowned out by the positive feedback that your followers should be giving you. You know, you always get more positive comments than negative comments. And as an influencer with experience, which all of these people are, should they not have at least learned to tune out the detractors, so to say, and focus on the positive feedback that they're getting? And in general, should you not be able to take the heat if you are familiar with the internet at all? People are being angry and a bit combative during the best of times, right? And we are currently not in a good spot with the game. So it's obvious that people are going to be a little bit more irritable when they're commenting on stuff, but if you don't like that, maybe just tune that out. You don't need to leave over the community sentiment being negative. And I have a certain level of understanding of why the community is in such a mood right now. It is understandable because we are in the state that the game is currently in. And in my opinion, there's always a block or mute button if you truly can't stand what people are saying, you know? I'm just very surprised that some of these creators have very precisely pointed only at the Destiny 2 community and made them responsible for their hiatus or for the state that the game is in, which I think is a huge mistake. And I honestly can't take that seriously when I'm truly trying to wrap my hand around this, when I'm truly trying to think about who's actually responsible for the state that the game is in. Usually creators are so far inside their in-group bubble that nearly nothing negative gets in there, so that little bit of, let's call it toxicity, even though I honestly hate that word, but when a little bit of toxicity comes through that bubble, there are still like 95% of well-meaning, positive and polite fans left within the audience in-group. So how bad can it really be? Unless these people are in fact not used to taking that little bit of heat in times where the game isn't doing so well. Maybe then again, only these creators truly know how it feels to have potentially hundreds of angry fans yelling at them. Although when going through their comment sections on social media platforms, I rarely see behavior in comments that I would honestly label as horrible and awful. What I see more though are people voicing their discontent with the state of the game. And I don't think that's toxic, that's simply negative feedback. Does that truly ruin your day and your enjoyment of the game so much that you have to take a month-long break? It seems that for some time now the critical voices are getting a little bit louder than the screechers of the usual Destiny 2 glazing community. And I think that is a truly positive thing in my opinion. It's only a good thing that we're going down that route. that means the community is going to be, in a positive way, more aware and maybe a little bit more intelligent with their decision making when it comes to being taken advantage of by Bungie. Because it's unlikely that a large majority of the community is going to cheer for the weird changes that Bungie is making. And in my opinion, that is a positive development. A more critical and more aware community means we have better spending and better buying decisions. We don't have these empty-headed fanboys in there anymore, screeching and yelling down everyone who has like the smallest bit of criticism for the game. Or maybe it's just until the new trailer hits and then everybody is fake hyping the game again on Reddit and we have all forgotten about the negative things. Who really knows? I, for one, truly do hope that we are at a turning point for the Destiny 2 community, and going forward, no matter where Bungie and the franchise itself is going, independent of that, the fans stay vigilant and critical like they are currently. Since I think personally, this would lead to an overall better product in the long run. Critical and open-minded and very loud feedback from customers is usually a good thing that should happen in every part of the gaming community, in my opinion. Nobody needs pure glazers. I mean, nobody wants pure haters either, but you know what I mean. We don't need a biased in-group, a hugbox, and safe opinion bubbles. I'm pretty sure Bungie already doesn't like reading posts on Reddit and forums. They haven't probably done that in many, many years. So it already has been very difficult for people to get their feedback to Bungie. Now it's just louder than before, and I think that is in its entirely a good thing, that the feedback and the negative feedback especially is louder than before. Or maybe they only, maybe Bungie only ever read the low sodium posts, like the Helldivers devs admitted to. I still can't get over this. How sad and thin-skinned you have to be to only venture to the safe space version of your Reddit community. Because you can't stand what's being posted on the main Reddit board. That's a little bit weird. Anyway, that's not part of this discussion. Let's just go back to Destiny 2 content creators. I think the most important part to talk about first would be my assessment or my thoughts on the individuals like Glad, Jake, and Dado going on hiatus or leaving, whether that's like final or, only until a certain point in time. And I gotta be honest, many of these guys I never actively watched. I only really tune into Dado's videos for the purpose of the guides and maybe the fact that he does kind of on the point, no nonsense raid guides as well. Quest guides, raid guides, he's usually the best one for that. And then maybe a ranking video or two. That's when I turned into Dado's videos to watch them. I usually try to watch smaller, more far out creators, especially for build guides and opinions. I do like more niche builds, and I'm also notoriously someone that always cheers for the underdog. So if there's like an underdog content creator out there, or let's call him what usually is seen as the contrarian or the haters in the community, you know what I mean, right? That's why I would argue to this day, one of the best creators attached to Destiny is DSR Joker, and believe it or not, I hate everything. Even though that guy basically only reviews the big content drops. But I think those two guys still have the best and most poignant criticism when it comes to the game. And they're both, believe it or not, they're both well-meaning and they're not haters. They're not detractors, as many want to claim, at least for DSR Joker. So in short, I have almost no knowledge of Glad and Jake because they don't really have provided the content I would like to watch. And Dado especially, I watched a few times, but not primarily for his opinionated takes on Destiny 2. Why is that? Is basically probably an important question. Well, that's simply because I believe being attached in such a way and ingrained with a company and a product makes it likely very difficult to speak truly critical about the product. That is nothing I actually know, and that's not something that I'm accusing anyone of. But I think, a case in point, DSR Joker was famously blocked by the narrative director the Destiny 2 Twitter account, and I think one of the community monitor. I don't know if it was actually DMG that blocked him, but he was ousted, and I don't know if he's actually blacklisted, but at least the mainstay social media accounts for Destiny completely blocked him due to his various critiques of the game. And that tells me that this level of criticism is not welcome in Destiny's eyes, maybe in the Bungie community or within the studio. So you can imagine that most thoughts that Dado had on Destiny were not things that I would consider too far out there or highly critical or interesting enough to listen to. Mostly because I think he is too closely attached to the game, and this is again something that's completely fine, he probably likes the game honestly and truly too much to be critical on the same level as a Joker, for example, or as I Hate Everything. That's why I enjoy these people more, and that's why I have never tuned into Dado for his opinions or critical opinions or his reviews of the seasons, because I always thought, to a little bit of a point, he was almost too generous. The few times that I have tuned in to his reviews, I always thought that you're leaving out certain details, and that's because you actually do like the game and you don't want to shit on it, which is understandable. Mostly since, again, he comes across as very calm and not very confrontational, and I like people who are speaking a little bit more directly, even though if that might become across as hurtful to people or toxic. I like that type of criticism more than always being so compromising when talking about things that you should not compromise about. I just like very, very critical and maybe even controversial content creators more than the mainstream part of the community. That does not mean I dislike any of the people named at all. I just have a very loose connection to them as a viewer. Maybe saw them once or twice, the exception being, of course, Dado, which I've more actively watched certain videos of. But what I would like to talk about is more a specific video from a content creator I do like and I do watch a lot, and that is Bife. And he made a longer video recently with his thoughts on the community and kind of the story of Bungie and where he came from as a content creator. Lots of, honestly, a little bit depressing stuff in there if you watch his or if you listen to his story. For one, he talked about Bungie's motto of being like a family, which irritates me even now hearing about this, because he expressed what felt like a genuine surprise at the fact that his sentiment, the sentiment of we are a family, turned out to be a full-on lie, since Bungie laid off a bunch of people twice in a very unfriendly and quite honestly inhumane manner. But if you worked for any company, you likely knew this philosophy as well. Like, being a family, that always sounds so cultish. I hate that sentiment. Anytime I hear that, a company claiming they're a big family, especially when it comes from the higher ups, from the C-level executives, it's just not true. Maybe between colleagues, you can have a good friendship or a very nice working environment, but even then, I wouldn't call it a family. That has always been corporate propaganda speech to me, designed to make the company itself look good on the outside to possible PR or investors, whatever. It's like the image of the company just needs to be clean, you know? But in reality, let's be honest, we have colleagues at work who can be friends, and then outside of work, we have our actual family. Any organization that uses "we are a family" as their slogan is either a cult or is using it as a PR statement to make themselves look good. And I was a little bit surprised that Bife truly believed that there was some sort of family-like community bond going on at the company. But anybody who has ever worked at all can tell you it is never like that. The entirety of Bungie, the entity Bungie, right, as a company, does not care about its workers, which is evident by now. It cares about what shareholders think and maybe what Sony wants, and then they care about money and profit. That is genuinely all that Bungie, the entity, cares about. The people working there, I cannot assume and I cannot talk about this because I don't have any insight in that, you know. Maybe the working environment is great at the company. Maybe the person-to-person environment is great, but we know that Bungie as a company is very problematic, and I think Bungie is the biggest problem. But let's continue talking about Bive's video for a little bit, because besides that, maybe an even more important point, Bive talked about how he feels that he cannot express and offer his genuine opinions on things anymore, either because he would be labeled a glazer or a shill, or either, you know, a hater, detractor, or a, you know, Bungie dick sucker, right? And I think that is a horrible sentiment, and to genuinely be worried about that is not good. And I don't know what Bive himself can do about that. The only assurance I can give him as a viewer is that me, as an active viewer who is interested in his opinions, I only care about his true and honest opinions, no matter if I agree with them or not. That is the most important thing in any content creator. I don't want to be pandered to, and I don't want sellouts. Basically, don't be a soulless corporate slave. Just be yourself. And that is all that matters to me as a viewer of the channel. And I don't know if it's due to the fact that I've been on the internet for so long, but shouldn't it be obvious that there will always be a subset of people calling you out in the comments in pretty much every video? Glazer and hater are both sides of the same type of comment coin, usually from people who have not meaningfully engaged with your content, or they have not watched the video at all, or they're simply salty that you did not express their expected opinion back then. You know, you didn't pander to them, and then now they're mad about this. Should these comments not just be ignored? They usually contain no valid criticism or contribute to anything. I would personally never get rid of those comments, as people are, in my opinion, free and should be able to express their dissatisfaction, even if that comes from a place of ignorance, stupidity, or lack of knowledge, or maybe they just don't generally like me. But this just sounds to me like any old comment section. There's people gonna be in there calling you a hater. There's people gonna be in there calling you a glazer, depending on what you're commenting about. There's nothing to be worked up about, but to Bive it seems this is really affecting his video making decisions. But it shouldn't. You should only worry about your integrity and your opinions. Don't worry about appeasing some nebulous crowd, because it's never going to work. There's always going to be a guy in there that disagrees or simply does not like you. And since we are talking about the community, let's continue there. I vehemently disagree about blaming the Destiny 2 player base, or whatever else you see as the community, for the state that the game is in. If anything, the D2 community came across to me as one of the more vocal, critical and outspoken gaming communities out there. Sure, it might not have always been like that. If I compare this to some other cult communities out there, where no amount of criticism or speaking out of line is welcome, I think the Destiny 2 community is doing pretty well for themselves currently. And maybe that is only due to the fact that the players have finally woken up on a landfill and realized, it kind of stinks in here. Maybe I should say something. Maybe I should speak out. And I shouldn't just take the abuse anymore. But I've seen tons and tons and tons of feedback over the years on the forums, on Reddits and videos, etc, etc. So the community has always been speaking out on the game. On the other hand, I can't really point out a wide community outcry for the portal, or the exotic starter packs, or more items in the Eververse, or shaders locked into shader packs, or the Iron Banner armor fiasco, or event cards that cost money to unlock. I cannot point out a single post where someone in the community was like, yeah, I sure wanna see the portal in the game. I sure want you to sunset the game again and reinvent Destiny. I also cannot point out at a big community outcry for the changes that were made to Destiny in Edge of Fate. Nobody asked for this. And I think people wanted Destiny 3. That's what people actually want. Not an attempt at a Frankenstein Destiny 3 that was added on top of the corpse of Destiny 2, with the entire rest of the game being sacrificed. Just for that. You know, blaming the community actually would be correct if the Destiny 2 community was lethargic and only ever appeases Bungie. They never spoke out, they were passively accepting all the horrendous changes, never pushing back, blindly purchasing everything, cheered on all the awful changes, and yelled and shouted down any and all criticism. But that's just not the case. I think the community is going in a good direction actually, holding Bungie accountable, speaking out, talking about the things, not just blindly and silently sitting back and taking it. In fact, I wish that would happen on a greater scale in the entire gaming industry. We need more pushback and more common thought, more critical minds out there now than ever. The gaming community, gaming space is not in a good place right now. It is not good. So no, I do not agree at all with bashing the Destiny 2 community. In this case or in any case. You can say a lot of negative and mean things about the modern gaming industry in general, and I might pick up this topic later on for sure, but right now the Destiny 2 community, when we're talking about the Destiny 2 community specifically, I think the community has only improved in the last few years, in my opinion. Now it all came to pass due to what Bungie tried to do to said community, so maybe if Bungie didn't push so far, perhaps you would still all be hyped and blind to what is actually going on at the studio. But this is an outcome I at least find refreshing. It is so frustrating to talk to a wall of fanboys that only scream you down and don't want to listen to a single critical word. It's nice seeing some people pick up on the issues and agreeing with the more critical crowd because it is sorely needed to improve the game. Maybe if Bungie listened, the whole Edge of Fate fiasco, the whole Portal thing would not have happened in the first place. But then again, criticism does not seem to be welcome at the company. Maybe at least the Portal would not have happened. And maybe. What I find way more irritating is those same content creators, not the ones that I've talked about, but the content creators, the Destiny 2 content creators, just the conglomerate as a whole, specific content creators, only blaming the Destiny 2 community and labeling them as toxic. If anybody uses that word, by the way, they immediately invalidate their argument. Toxic, genuinely using toxic, not just as a joke or because you have to use it because you lack the description of what you mean. Toxicity is such a propagandized word nowadays. It was literally just invented by the likes of Riot Games to justify draconian chat censorship because all the players are toxic. They're all toxic guys. You are not allowed to write GG, well played, easy. That's toxic. Don't do it, you're gonna get banned. So toxic is just a term that's used to shut you up. Don't let that be done to you. Just the same as review bombing is a made-up term by corporations to shield them from critique and customer backlash. Content creators who do that only do so since it's an easy way to shield Bungie from responsibility, and maybe that sentiment would have worked in the past, as I've already laid out, but the community is no longer taking and eating up that level of gaslighting. And that is why content creators who still do that to this day find out in a very unpleasant way that it's not a good idea to shit on the community when the community is already looking at the game with a very critical eye. I think the true problem is not Destiny 2 or the community or the content creators. It's solely Bungie. Bungie as a company is not capable of navigating the ship to its valid destination. All the decisions in the past, and even some of the completely tone-deaf behavior of the likes of DMG, has shown me that this company has not learned. They either do not understand their community and customers, or they don't want to understand, or they don't want to listen to us, or they don't care. That is the actual problem. I don't think Destiny 2 under Bungie's leadership is going anywhere positive. And am I convinced that Sony is going to do a better job? Well, at least handing the IP to another studio would be a start. So I'm on board for at least trying that one out. But I don't know if Bungie and Sony instead of Bungie is going to do a better job. I just don't think Bungie has that magic touch anymore, since, let's be honest, it's not even the real Bungie of old anymore. Most of the true genius that has led the company and the studio has completely gone by now, replaced by individuals which I don't have much faith in as of right now, to be honest. So let's just get into a few other topics that are on my mind, because I've seen an age-old argument going around. It's basically always making the rounds at times like this. And these are things like, do you hate Destiny? And the answer to that is no. Am I just hating on the game because it's, popular right now? And the answer to that is also no. I criticized the game because I wanted to get better, because I happen to be a player of that game. Then the other question is, why are you still playing it if you don't like it? And to that I have to say, 1, I have not played it since Ash and Iron's release, and 2, I just haven't reached that level of apathy yet. The apathy that Bungie is afraid about. I still, to a certain point, care about the game, and that's why I'm still here. If I were apathetic about Destiny 2, I would have been gone long ago. And that has genuinely happened with certain genres or franchises. I've left them behind, never looking back. But I will concede 2 points. First, yes, I have taken extensive breaks from all of the live service games I play, and I believe that is the best and most healthy way to play these games in order to not burn yourself out. And second, and I'm in agreement with a large part of the community here, I'm likely not paying for more expansions or content after Renegades, especially if Renegades is not a feasible, noticeable shift in Bungie's direction. But that all depends on how the DLC actually turns out in the end. Are you allowed to like bad products? Yes, absolutely. You are allowed to have guilty pleasures or like things that other people seem to hate. That's completely fine. You're also allowed to just go with the flow, or let's say you're allowed to be a sheep in the herd. And that's not even meant to be as an insult right now. If you're just going with the flow of the current thing because you don't really care, or you don't see the issue, or you don't want to be bothered, that's all fine. I would, however, like to simply state my following assessment. The more people buy and mindlessly consume mediocre or bad products, the more the industry standard will shift to that as a normal state of being. That means it is okay to deliver subpar products, and since it is okay to deliver lower average product quality, that trend will continue, especially if trend-setting companies like Bungie can seemingly get away with it. Also see Nintendo, for example. There's a lot of Nintendo rage and hatred out there, but people are still buying all of the products. The current consumer behavior leads to a steady decline in overall AAA product quality, while prices are skyrocketing and performance optimization is in the absolute toilet, and everything gets outsourced or put into Unreal Engine 5, yada yada yada. You know what's going on in the gaming industry, right? You might not care about all of that, but there are people like me and others who would really like to see better quality control in the products that they are buying for up to $80. Keep that in mind. The price that we are currently paying for certain things is crazy. And then the level of quality we're getting is not proportional to the money that we're paying. Unfortunately, that community, that critical community, is still in a clear minority nowadays. And as a consumer zombie, you might think that I'm very selfish for pointing all of that out and calling you out and being mean and wanting the industry to change back to a more purpose and quality focused driven development cycle. But keep in mind that these changes would benefit all of us in the long run, which includes you, even if you think that any of this does not affect you yet. And that is why I'm specifically here, because I wanted to just at least add my voice, and I've decided to throw my hat into the ring to hopefully make the space of video games better again in the long run. Yes, I'm specifically talking about the AAA industry space, but I don't believe for a second that this consumer-enabled trend is not also affecting the AA or the indie studios. As a developer nowadays, you must really have balls of steel to not just go with the industry standard and the trend nowadays. That's why everything is pushing $70, $80. Even though we're asking ourselves, why? That's why Xbox Game Pass is getting expensive, and we're all asking ourselves, why? And yes, all of this is fully and only in our hands, like we as the consumers. But this also means our behavior has partially led us into this current predicament, because people just keep buying this stuff. Please just don't sit back and fork over hundreds of dollars for mediocre and badly running games and call that fine, or that has been standard like 5 years now. You're being slowly cooked, like a frog, and eventually you too will wake up in a stinky landfill of mid-games and wonder, how did I get here? Which is what happened to the Destiny 2 community. They woke up someday with Edge of Faith in their lap and wondered, well, this reeks. I can't take this any longer, I gotta speak out about this. Laziness, inaction, an insane level of tolerance and ignorance leads us unfortunately down to this place. And eventually that decline will lead to apathy, the one thing that Bungie fears the most. And I'm gonna be honest, I would like to intervene and try to turn this ship around before we hit critical levels of apathy, because then you're gonna see a video gaming crash happen. And then all of the cool companies that you liked and wanted to purchase from, they're gonna be gone. So if you choose to defend the faceless corporation of your choice, I can't stop you. But just keep in mind, if you can, you only hurt yourself and the very industry that facilitates your gaming hobby with such a mindset. Again, you're allowed to like bad and mediocre products. I like Man of Steel. It's a notoriously bad Superman movie. It's fine to have guilty pleasures or to like things that other people hate. But I do not blindly defend the movie or Snyder, because I acknowledge the flaws and I agree it's not a good movie, but I can still enjoy it, despite its flaws. But I will never blindly defend it. I've also never watched another Snyder production ever since, mainly because I lost interest in movies and film in the industry. That is, by the way, what apathy truly is. I'm completely gone as a potential customer because I have lost interest in watching movies and shows. There's nothing there that is interesting me anymore. If I still had that enthusiasm, maybe I would make movie reviews and try to better that industry, but I don't care about it anymore. While I might not like Bungie as a company, Destiny as a game has still so much potential as it turns out, and if they hit the nail on the head in one of their updates, if that happens, once that happens, it's actually really, really fun and good and high quality. See Forsaken or Witchgreen, for example. I think those two are examples of absolute highlights. Unfortunately, they happen so far and few between low points. And Destiny sometimes hits these high points, and then I can see glimpses of the old Halo feeling coming through, the old Bungie, great stories, great gameplay, great atmosphere and vibes. It's still in there somewhere. And that's also the reason why I'm still here talking about this. So you are allowed to like shitty products, and I can review and criticize those products in the hope that at least my voice can contribute to maybe improving that product, even if you dislike that fact. And you are also allowed to voice your opposition to my sentiment, or maybe just express the fact that you simply really don't like me. It's just the internet, comments and words can't hurt anyone. I'm gonna stand by that. The things that you write in the comment sections will never hurt me, and I will never get upset about this, no matter what you are typing down there. The mainstreaming and the shift from purpose-driven to profit-driven game development has irreparably damaged the industry, and it's not just happening in Destiny 2. And that is the reason why I started making videos in the first place, kind of to highlight good games when I can find them, and critique mediocre games, or bad games, or critique games that I want to get better. Or just do a full rant on a really shitty product that nobody should play, wink wink wink. I just want people to think a little bit. Just think a little bit with your head and your wallet. And please value your money more. and don't buy every single thing that comes out of the market just because it's shiny and new. Now, and finally, since this is inevitably going to come up as a comment somewhere during the Renegades review, am I even a fan of Star Wars? Or am I just one of those Star Wars haters? Well, the answer to that is, of course I am. And to that I can tell you a little personal story. When I was a wee little lad 50 years ago, when I was a small child, my dad showed me the chase sequence on the Forest Moon of Endor. You know, the sequence with the speeder bikes in the forest where Luke pretty much ends off the bike and then most of the Imperial troopers basically rammed into random trees. I had no real context to anything or what that all was, what I just saw, but my dad basically told me, yeah, that scene is okay because, you know, there's not too much violence happening there and I would be allowed to watch the movie when I was older. But I still had no idea what all the setup was about. He was leading to something until he showed me what he got me as a present. That was during, Christmas. And he got me the same Lego speeder set from the scene in the movie. The same Lego set that I still own today, you know, the OG speeders. That, by the way, is what's called a core memory. So, of course, I am a Star Wars fan. I literally grew up with Star Wars. And I still own tons of the original Lego sets. They're still sitting in my bookshelves or display case, whatever you call that. But what I am not, and what I will never call myself, is a fanboy, because that's an insult. And as such, I think we need to talk about the difference between a fan and what people consider to be a fanboy. You know, I like Star Wars. I like Star Wars as in I like LucasArts Star Wars. I like the extended universe. I like the old books. I like Bane 1, 2, 3, Red Harvest, Death Troopers, Old Republic. I don't like what Disney has done to the canon, the story, the characters, and especially the fandom. So let me try and lay this out for you as best as I can. You see, a fan is a true follower of a type of media franchise or anything. Basically, you are truly a fan of a thing. The other word, fanboy, quote unquote, is a very aptly used insult to describe empty-headed cult members to the corporations. Especially the corporations that overtake beloved franchises and then kind of just monetize them into the ground. There is one important distinction between the two. A fan is a genuine supporter, an enthusiast, and a lover of all things including the deeper lore, the expanded universe, the books, and the stories around Star Wars. It is also likely that a fan is a long-time follower, while a lot of the fanboys are shortly joined or that they only know Disney Star Wars, and they are not truly involved with the franchise besides the surface-level consumerism. A fanboy has never read a single expanded universe books. They don't know who Bane is or how he was involved in the Rusan campaign. They know like maybe lore tuber videos, that's surface level stuff, right? They don't know anything about the old empire or who the first Sith emperor was. They have never seen the full star map. They don't actually know what Outer Rim refers to. A fanboy only recognizes platitudes and empty member berries. He kind of sees words and images and then recognizes them as marketable material because the fanboy has seen them in the movies as products and promotional material. The intellect of a fanboy and his knowledge does not expand past Disney Star Wars bubble and their products, and he basically praises everything that company puts out, no matter what. It's especially apparent in the creator and influencer space where Disney gets routinely sucked off and everyone basically sucks each other off all the time in this weird cannibalistic nepotism where both parties profit from the promotion and money. And there's like not a single ounce of true fandom present, and there's also not a single ounce of criticism there. It's just we're at the Disney park and we're going ooh and ah and ooh at everything we see because we're getting paid to do that. For the fanboy, it's all about consumerism. He's the prime, normie consumer zombie, the absolute drone, salivating at every single little bit of recognizable material, and that little inkling that he could own a copy, or a statue, or a plushie, or a Funko Pop of some other meaningless physical or metaphysical product, right? It's simply and only about displaying brand loyalty and reference material to flaunt that you are a part of a fandom, quote unquote, even though you have never actually touched a single good Star Wars story, and you don't know what an actual good story would be if it jumped you in the face. And naturally, fanboys are always at odds with true fans of a franchise and media, because a Turns out while the true fans can be critical, and doubly so if they are heavily invested, the fanboy only mindlessly eats up slop like the pay piggy he is considered to be. And that is what is hurting our media landscape in general. That is why we can't have nice things. While everything is kind of a rehash of a rehash of a remake, this is why nobody takes risks anymore, why everything is self-referential and some of the worst corpo collaborations imaginable is because of those fanboys that just keep buying slop without question, without hesitation, day one, and it just works every time. No matter what the company puts out, it just sells like hotcakes. And yes, Destiny likely got a boost to its sales of the DLC. That's why they're marketed as the Star Wars DLC. They got sales and recognition on the name Star Wars alone. And they did that not for the love of the game, but because it would make money. Destiny sacrificed their lore integrity on the altar of brand collaboration and recognition in order to take in more cash. And don't let any lore tuber try and tell you this is okay. Like, don't let them do a Marvel on you. Of course, as a storyteller, you can always pull out any old trick to make anything canon that you want. That is why time travel is so popular, it basically can explain everything. Don't let Bungie tell you that Vex wearing clothes is totally legit because those Vex were ousted when they resisted the conductor, right? Those Vex were shown in the cantina for one purpose, to evoke the image of the droids from Star Wars who always hang out in these bars. But the Vex are not Star Wars droids, they are on a whole different level conceptually. And seeing a Vex acting human, or even attempting to act specifically human-like, is weirdly and off-putting. Usually, defective Vex or strange Vex were already insanely rare in the past. I think point out two examples of Vex being there. The one on the EO Captain mission and the other one which is Asher Mir's Harpy, right? And now they somehow want to identify and mimic humanity. Specifically humanity? Human behaviors? And why? Why would a Vex hang out at a bar? That is so out of scope for anything that a Vex stood for. It's laughable. Does that not piss anyone off that is remotely interested in Destiny 2 lore? Of course they will find a way to explain it. Absolutely it will be explained in a way, in a lore card or maybe even in game. But is that good for the overall lore and story of Destiny 2, even if we get a legitimate explanation? Don't you think it was shoehorned in there? Destiny has such a wide variety of lore and story that you can take from, and themes to take from for an expansion, even if it's supposed to be some sort of side story. But you absolutely did not have to pull from Star Wars canon, even if it's just inspirational. The world of Destiny 2 has enough inspiration as is. Nobody can tell me this was done for any other reason than brand appeal. Recognize the lightsabers and clap. See the ATSTs and cry. Applaud the cantina scene, please. That's the only reason the lore will now be bent into shape to fit that scenario. At least that is my prediction. I hope it's not entirely true. But we're gonna get reference material. We've already seen it in the trailer. Are you allowed to like Star Wars? Yeah, of course. I don't want to take anything away from you. I like Star Wars and I like Destiny. But if you cannot see how shoving Star Wars iconography into Destiny, however you disguise it as, is only damaging to both lore, feel and aesthetics of this franchise, then you're either blind or ignorant. This is Bungie we're talking about. Halo Bungie is long dead, but I think the roots of the studio should still be taken into account. This is the same studio. The same studio is now delivering you a Star Wars themed DLC that reeks of intellectual, creative and innovative bankruptcy. Not because members of the studios are totally into doing that or the developers really wanted to code this stuff, probably not. It's because the people pulling the strings decided this is going to be a good strategy for marketing, since D2 is not doing so well right now. It has not been doing well since the final shape actually. And if you are Sony and you have slapped down a whole bunch of money for an overrated studio, you're sure as hell are gonna make certain that money somehow comes back rolling in. And I'm pretty sure that's how we got here. And if Sony ever takes over, don't believe it's gonna necessarily be better. I'm just very black-pilled when it comes to the gaming industry in this specific part. It's not just about reference material in general. Who cares about like a helmet that kind of vaguely looks like the Master Chief's iconic helm? That's not the point I'm making. But we have literal stormtroopers and Darth Vader in the game right now. That goes beyond subtle referencing, and this goes into like this disgusting corporate collaboration slop territory. It just damages the game's vibe and feel. It damages the seriousness and my ability to get immersed in anything. It's also just puts the artistic ability of the developers in question. Like, really? Just copy Star Wars like that? Even in Renegades, where we have thematic armor and environments, yeah, that Bungie flair is strewn all over the place. It's there. But even if you hide the Sarlacc pit and tell me it's not a Sarlacc pit, it's an egregore pit, and the drifter is not frozen in carbonite, but it's actually stasis crystals, and we're totally not on Tatooine, it's some other sand planet, it still evokes so much Star Wars iconography that I just can't take it seriously. This is not Destiny, it's a hollow shell masquerading and wearing Star Wars like a skin suit. It's almost cynical the way Bungie tries to bury these obvious "I understood that reference" moments, that they really think you're that stupid. Basically, it's Star Wars, but with a splash of Bungie paint. And that is somehow not damaging to the franchise. It does not degrade the overall tone of Destiny 2. If you want to like Destiny and modern Star Wars, please do so in an intelligent manner and do not just seal clap if you get served the most blatant and insulting piece of reference material. This self-cannibalizing process of ingesting and puking up and then re-ingesting self-referential content just needs to stop. It does not lead to good games or stories, since you can never deviate from a set path set in stone by the past you are referencing. It's kind of empty and meaningless. Like, why and how would you cheer on something like this? Let alone, why would you genuinely get excited for this? This is a testament to the fact that those people have been eating mediocre slop for so long, they cannot recognize a good game anymore. They cannot fathom and understand or recognize good storytelling and ideas. Case in point, people still think Edge of Fate story was somehow genius. You know, these people only recognize the reiterated and regurgitated slop. And if once in a blue moon an actual 6 out of 10 game comes along, you know, not the 4 out of 10 slop that they've been eaten. If like a 6 out of game thing comes along, you know, it's not even that good. But it's way better than the stuff that they've been eating so far. All of a sudden, that 6 out of 10 game becomes a 10 out of 10. It's God's gift to gaming. Never seen before. Super innovative, amazing. Even though, let's be honest, we have tons of these games like that out there. You just haven't seen them ever. You have never walked past the mediocre slop that you've been consuming. You haven't stepped out of your boundaries and tried something new. You haven't ever played a good game. Nothing Bungie has been putting out throughout years has ever reached a true 9 out of 10 experience. And if you are a long-time Bungie fanboy, you need to look in the mirror and broaden your horizon. Bungie has been floundering for a long time, and you just don't know what's on the other side of the pond. We can all like the franchise that we grew up with, or we discovered for ourselves, but we also need to practice some introspection, and we need to be critical for the good of that franchise. If not, you end up like Destiny and Star Wars. Please don't be a cult fanatic about your favorite franchise or corporation, even worse. The corporations don't give a single hoot about you or anything you care about. They don't care about your sensibilities, your interests, whether you have a flag in your bio, even though they put flags in their bio every month. That's, you know, Pride Month, there's flags in the bio, but they're doing that for PR reasons. They do not care about you as a consumer or as a person. Please stop sucking up to faceless companies and corporations. Remember, nobody wants to take the things away that you like. No critic wants that. We want this to be better for everyone, and that includes you, even though you might not like what is currently going on in the Destiny 2 community. And that's kind of my final point. We all kind of want things to be better. I don't want the game to die, but I want Bungie to no longer work on Destiny 2. All depends on where the DLC is going. Maybe Bungie makes a miracle again, but keep in mind what happens after that. What comes after that? Are we gonna go back to the status quo again? Or is Bungie all of a sudden gonna bring their A game from now on? I hope you found this video at least a little bit entertaining, me rambling for that long. And I think it's a good thing that I did not include this in the review, because this has nothing to do with reviewing Renegade. So it's good that I've done it right now, because this is just general video game stuff. So hope you enjoyed, and see you next time.